Hello, I am Dr. Tuğba Günebak. I am a nutrition and diet specialist. Today we will be discussing an introduction to functional nutrition. Functional nutrition is one of the most important topics today. Hippocrates said, "Let your food be medicine and your medicine be food." Therefore, we can briefly define functional nutrition as a nutritional practice that facilitates building a bridge between a person's body, environment, and soul. So if you ask why functional nutrition is so important today, it's because we are faced with many chronic diseases nowadays, and the leading factor that shortens human life is chronic diseases. Did you know that some chronic diseases are caused by inflammatory diseases that originate from stress? I would like to share a piece of data with you. It is said that, according to research, by 2030, the treatment costs arising from diseases caused by inflammation in the body, that is, diseases originating from inflammation at the cellular level, are expected to exceed $47 trillion. What does this mean? Today, because of the stress we cannot manage, the bodies we do not understand, and the inability to choose the right foods, we are actually harming our own bodies. And when we learn proper nutrition and incorporate functional nutrition into our lives, we will be laying the foundation for healthy, peaceful, and emotionally balanced days in the future. So we mentioned chronic diseases. Now I want us to take a look at this. Why are chronic diseases increasing? Here, the primary factor is, of course, nutrition. Now I hear things like this. For example, people say, "Doctor, my grandfather used to eat butter and consume animal meats back in the day, and he lived a very healthy life." But we overlook this point. Nowadays, let's look at animals and animal husbandry. Yes, let's consume animal meat. We all want to get quality protein. We say we should consume more because we think animal-based protein is superior to other types of protein. But we ignore the fact that some people who deal extensively with animals, some producers, inject antibiotics into the animal's tissue, even when it's not necessary, to prevent the animal from getting sick, or that they give hormones to make the animal grow faster and become more robust. So when we eat this meat, we also ingest the antibiotic and hormone residues originating from this meat, or the stress molecules that have formed in the animal's tissue due to the stress it experienced during slaughter. Therefore, today we can no longer access animal-based foods that are as clean as they used to be, or environmental pollution. Maybe in the past, your grandfather lived in a village, on a mountain, or on a plateau. Today, the moment we step outside, we are confronted with environmental pollution. Even if you do nothing, when you open your car window, you are exposed to lead from the exhaust of the cars in front of and behind you. How are you going to cleanse this lead from your tissues? You need to be aware of antioxidant and anti-inflammatory foods, and you should have integrated functional nutrition into your life so that you can cleanse your tissues, or our eating habits. I notice that many people say this, or I observe the people around me when I eat out. Everyone is in a rush to eat quickly. They have to get to work, get to their job, take care of their child. We eat quickly. And because we eat so fast, we don't feel full. Why don't we feel full? Because it takes exactly 20 minutes for the hunger center and the satiety center in our brain to be stimulated. I'd like to elaborate on this a bit. For example, we say, "Thank goodness my eyes can see." But actually, it's not the eyes that see, it's the brain. Because it's the visual center in the brain that sees, it can turn the light collected by our eyes into an image. The part that feels full is not our stomach, but the satiety center in our brain. We need 20 minutes to feel full. If we don't use these 20 minutes properly, in other words, if we eat quickly and try to leave the table within just 5 minutes, then for the remaining 15 minutes, our brain will still be trying to eat something. Therefore, we should be changing our eating habits just as much as our food choices. How are we going to change them? We will learn all of this very clearly in these functional nutrition lessons. We will apply them ourselves, and hopefully we will help those around us apply them too. Plus, we are now sedentary people. What does it mean to be a sedentary person? It means a person who spends most of their days sitting. The World Health Organization says that if you want to protect your heart health, you should be doing 150 minutes of walking exercise per week. I wonder how many of you actually do 150 minutes a week? I think maybe 2 or 3 out of 10 people listening to me right now actually do it. Because we don't walk, our muscles become weaker. Since weak muscles can't firmly surround the bone tissue, our bones are more prone to thinning. In other words, the capacity for bone loss is higher. Then when we're talking with a friend, they say, for example, so-and-so's mother fell and broke her hip. We think that the aunt who fell broke her hip because she fell. No, our bone tissue can only store calcium until the age of 35. After the age of 35, the doors to our calcium reserves close, and from that moment on, we can only use as much calcium as we get from the food we eat each day. Whatever we can't get, we draw from the reserves we've accumulated up to that age. So our bone tissue is like an active account where we can deposit and withdraw money until the age of 35, but after 35, it's like an account where you can never deposit money again, only withdraw from it continuously. In other words, it gets depleted day by day. So what will you do to prevent it from being depleted? You will need to pay attention to the amount of calcium you get each day. You will need to recognize and know foods that are rich in calcium. You also need to be aware of which foods should be consumed together so that this calcium can be absorbed into your tissues. Therefore, we should adopt an active lifestyle. At the same time, we are exposed to many environmental toxins. For example, we use computers. We are exposed to radiation from the screens of the computers we use. We get on a plane, maybe to go to a meeting. When we board a plane, we are exposed to radiation. For instance, research shows that the level of radiation exposure in the front seats of a plane is higher than in the back seats. So what do? We always try to sit at the front, but actually we don't know if we sit in the back, we'll be exposed to less radiation. We suffer the consequences of not knowing. That's why we need to learn. Another thing is that we live in enclosed spaces. This is one of the factors that increases the risk of chronic diseases. You might wonder, what harm could sitting in an enclosed space do to me? You might think that. But when you look at it, the primary disadvantage of being indoors is vitamin D deficiency. Vitamin D, as in D for diabolical vitamin D. In fact, it's a vitamin that acts like a hormone in the human body. So if you actually have a vitamin D deficiency, if you are not exposed to enough sunlight during the day, if your skin does not directly see sunlight, and because this sunlight does not touch your skin, you are not synthesizing enough vitamin D, then you should definitely think of it as if you are missing a hormone. So when you encounter health problems such as diabetes, hypertension, kidney diseases, osteoporosis, or obesity caused by vitamin D deficiency, you shouldn't be surprised. So what should we do then? How can we increase our vitamin D levels? Which foods should I focus on more? We need to be thinking about and learning how to increase vitamin D synthesis in our bodies, and we will learn this. Along with this, I believe that stress is the primary health problem of our time. We are exposed to a lot of stress, but we don't know how to manage it. For example, now in face-to-face classes, I am eagerly waiting for your answers to my questions. For example, if I asked how many of you meditate, maybe only 1 out of 10 people would say, I do. Actually, when you look at it, you might be meditating in the true sense, or you might be performing prayers. You might be going on nature walks alone, creating an opportunity to listen to yourself in a quiet environment. All of these are possible, but do you actually do them? If you do, how often do you do them? This is also very important. Because if we can't manage stress, emotional stress leads to stress reactions at the cellular level. And these cellular stress reactions gradually damage the cell. So is this fate? No, it isn't. With antioxidant nutritional interventions and along with that, detoxification, in other words, what people commonly refer to as detox interventions, we can cleanse our tissues. But when I say detox, don't think of just drinking fruit or vegetable juices. We will talk about it. I will explain it in detail. Another important point is aging gracefully. What does it mean to age gracefully? In order for us to have an ideal body, to live a long life, or to enjoy our days throughout our lives, we need to learn how to age healthily. Because today, according to data from the World Health Organization, and this might surprise you, the threshold for middle age now starts at 65. So up until the age of 65, we are still considered young. The expected lifespan is 95 years. Today, I am 45 years old. Roughly speaking, if I assume I will live according to World Health Organization data, that means I have another 50 years ahead of me. I will be living these 50 years running around and having fun. Or will I be spending them searching for a cure to some illness at doctors' offices or dietitians' clinics? The eating habits and food choices I adopt today will determine this. Therefore, I want us to discuss functional nutrition with all its details so that I don't just reach you, but also have an impact on those around you.